3 contests in the race for the Republican nomination wrapped up last night. It was a big night for former Senator Rick Santorum, who won in Missouri, Minnesota, and Colorado. Now, the only problem is many voters may not realize that winning these caucuses really doesn't mean anything. So, is the caucus process just too confusing, and is it leading to chaos? Ben has the reality check you won't see anywhere else.
Let's begin, for example, with the chaos that took place in Nevada on Saturday. I heard from a lot of people, many of whom believe there was voter fraud in the way the caucuses were handled. Let's start with the confusion of a caucus over a primary. Many voters new to the process may have thought this was a primary, but it was not. In a caucus, you have to show up at a specific time of day. The group then caucuses, and the whole voting process is over. In the case of one caucus held at Green Valley High School, the whole thing was held at 10:30 in the morning. But many voters believed that they could come in and vote, as in a primary, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So, after the voting was over, many people were still coming in, but their votes were not counted. You can hear the frustration of this voter from this clip on YouTube.
Because I'm a grandfather keeping care of grandkids at 9 o'clock in the morning, all right? And I couldn't get out the door. And it doesn't say that I couldn't vote before 10:15.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, I tell you, when you're trying to build a good Republican base, you're f***ing it up by doing it. I'm going to say that because I'm pissed about it.
Because many voters did not understand how a caucus works, they were left out of the process. The other thing that made such a mess out of Nevada is one very wealthy casino bigwig, who is also a Gingrich supporter, Sheldon Adelson, persuaded the Republican Party to hold a special Saturday night session specifically for Jewish voters. The Republican Party agreed. The problem started when non-Jewish voters showed up to caucus. Many were told that they couldn't, which of course is not true. You can't discriminate against people on a religious basis. It took some time for election officials, though, to figure that out. In the end, though, Nevada belonged to Mitt Romney. Romney finished with over 16,000 votes in his favor, compared to Newt Gingrich and Ron Paul, who finished with 6,000 plus apiece. In fact, a total of only 33,000 votes were cast on Saturday. That's less than 10% of all the Republicans in Nevada. It's a very small number. And yet the disorganization was so bad in that state that it took party officials 2 days to count and figure out who won. And that raised suspicions among a number of voters. Combine that with the disorganization in Iowa. Remember, Mitt Romney was declared the winner by 8 votes. Then it turns out Rick Santorum actually won Iowa by 42. What's worse, the results in 8 precincts in Iowa were lost. Party officials simply decided that we'll never know who won those precincts. Really? Matt Swann, the head of the Iowa GOP, has now resigned because of all the problems with the caucus there. Which then brings us to last night. Those who did turn out for Rick Santorum, well, he finished first in Missouri and in Minnesota and in Colorado. Very good news for his campaign. But what is bad news for Santorum supporters, those wins technically don't mean anything. That's because in a primary, you're not attempting to win states, as some people believe. You're trying to win delegates. A delegate, a person who will go to the Republican National Convention in Tampa and will vote for the candidates there. Not one single delegate was awarded last night. Instead, the caucuses in Minnesota and Colorado were the very first step in the delegate selection process. I've told you before that it's the same way in Iowa. There were 28 delegates there to be awarded. Whether Santorum or Romney really came in first is a moot point, because what really matters, which candidate is picking up delegates. For example, according to sources in Colorado, this is what happened in Colorado in one county last night. In one precinct in Larimer County, the straw poll vote was 23 for Santorum, 13 for Paul, 5 for Romney, and 2 for Gingrich. There were 13 delegate slots, though, and Ron Paul got all 13. So here's what you need to know. I can't tell you why the caucus process still exists. It is confusing, and without question, when people show up to vote, as they did in Nevada, and they're told they can't because they missed the caucus, it turns off voters. When people vote for Rick Santorum in Missouri or Minnesota and then go home only to find out that the delegates selected are voting for Ron Paul, it disenfranchises voters. If the Republican Party is really interested in reaching out and expanding its base, you need to make the process clear, easy, and open. Not one that appears like voters are involved, only to find out that the candidate selection is being made by someone else. And that is Reality Check.
What do you think? Would you like to make your voice heard on this story? You can do so by simply heading over to Ben's Facebook page. You can find it by searching Ben Swann, WXIX.
It is a confusing issue, and no doubt we'll continue to see confusion
Sure.
in the next few months.
Absolutely.
Yeah.